Welcome, dear viewers, to CouchWarrior TV on YouTube. I'm the CouchWarrior, and you are watching the return of Dark Messenger. Welcome to our first episode since the return of Dark Messenger. We are going to start out today by getting reacquainted with Sentrosi. When we left off, this Let's Play, it wasn't really a Let's Play. We're basically calling it a location-based playthrough. So we're picking locations, and we're kind of just playing through those locations, taking a tour with Sentrosi, looking over his shoulder. It is going to be the same format here. We're going to pick some locations around Skyrim, DLC, and mods, and we are going to go through those with him. And along the way, we're going to be talking about all kinds of things. We're going to talk about gear, we're going to talk about tactics, we're going to talk about mods and lore, and probably even some things that are going on the channel and with the podcast. So welcome back, all of you. It is good to be back. This seemed like a format that was something I could handle in the time that I have available. These are going to be short episodes. I'm going to be, targeting kind of that sweet spot in 30 to 40 minutes. The episodes will certainly not come out probably more than a week at a time. That may not be true here at the start, just because I want to do a review of Sentrosi's loadout, let you know kind of some of the things that are going on in my setup here to get you familiar, and then we're going to kick it off with something simple, something classic, kind of a palate cleanser to get us started again. So let's talk a little bit about the premise of this playthrough from the start. The idea was that I was going to take a Reguard vampire assassin type character, kind of bow focused, and we're going to go through a bunch of different areas, and then that would allow you, the viewer, to kind of pick areas around Skyrim that you were interested in and get a little sense for what it's like to play through them. Of course, it's going to be specific to this character type. Sentrosi is very much an archer assassin type, not very heavy on the magic. However, I have some kind of interesting and exciting things in store. So let's get right into it here. Let's talk a little bit about the character himself. When we left off, he was at about level 48, and because of issues with saved games and so forth, I had to recreate him using a saved game at level 46. I have since brought him up to very close to where he was when we left off. So I don't think that we have lost too much. Some of the content that was in the saved game that I was not able to recover was content that you will see in the Dark Messenger series having to do with Apocrypha and some of the stuff that we did in Solstheim. I will be playing through that content, but probably won't re-record those locations that I've already been to. That seems like it would be ridiculous. So we're not going to do that. Sentrosi is a Reguard assassin, archer type. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Dark Messenger, if you go back into the early episodes, I talk a little bit about why I picked him. I went with Reguard simply because I hadn't done a Reguard before Sentrosi, and then I also thought it would be interesting to experiment with some of the racial abilities around the Reguards and stamina with regard to bow use, given how critical stamina is to the use of the bow. So in addition to bow being the primary combat style, obviously we've been through some of the Dark Brotherhood content. We have high levels in sneak, high levels in ranged weaponry and light armor. He is very focused on alchemy, big into poisons and other things. We're going to see some interesting things happen with poisons, and then also enchanting. He's very simple character build when you think about it. I have not invested in any one-handed skills or anything like that. It's pretty much all, archery, light armor, sneak, enchanting, and alchemy. That's pretty much it. So you'll notice, yes, he is a vampire. I have customized a mod so that his eyes appear yellow. I don't really play him as if he were a vampire in the traditional sense. I have some simple play rules here. Sentrosi is a cultist. He worships Lorcan, otherwise known as Shor by the Nords. The old god name of the Nords would be Shor. He's kind of unusual in the sense that he's got an affinity for Shor, but he is of one of the races of men that is non-Nord. The Nords have a special place in their hearts for Shor. They believe that Shor is responsible for creating them and protecting them, and they believe that throughout the ages, avatars of Shor or servants of Shor have come back to save them kind of as a race or a culture from time to time. And so he's kind of unusual in that he has an affinity for Shor, and part of the background story that kind of explains how he came to be here in Skyrim. It's his pursuit of Shor and knowledge of Lorcan that has brought him here. In the lore, the way I'm telling it, in my customized version of the lore, Lorcan, of course, is the dead god. He is the god who was killed by the other spirits in retaliation for creating Mundus. And there's something about that idea of the dead god that's particularly of interest to me. So the ritualistic face paint we see is an element of that. I've also given him the name of Shor's Hawk, and it kind of gets at the persona that I'm creating with him. He's sort of predatory. He's like a bird of prey type of character. That's why I went with the yellow eyes, kind of reminiscent of the golden eagle, the booted eagle. It's also known as, I like this idea. So he does have vampire abilities because technically he's a vampire, but according to my play rules, he never transforms into a vampire lord. I simply pretend that does not exist. It's almost as if I'm sort of creating my own class of not even a vampire. I wouldn't call it a vampire. I like to think of it as though these are gifts that are given to him through the worship of his god for performing his duties. And his duties, as he sees them, are to basically help to save the races of men from destruction, from all those things that want to destroy them, whether it be the Thalmor or the dragons or the vampires or whatever it is. He feels it's his responsibility to save the races of men, and then also to find that special individual who he believes is a Nord who's destined to save the races of men from imminent destruction. That person who will kind of be the equivalent of the next Tiber Septim, who will save the races of men from all the things that are threatening them at this point. So that's kind of his mythos and his mission. So let's talk a little bit about him. First of all, let's take a look at the environment. You'll notice it looks very different. We're deep in the heart of the swamps by Morthal. In the past, this has been an area that I have just never been interested in going to. It just was always kind of a miserable place, but I am running a number of mods here that make it the place I want to spend the most time in just because it's gorgeous. I'm using, first of all, I'm running some high-end equipment here. I'm using an ENB. I'm using Realvision ENB. I'm using enhanced lighting and effects. And then I am using several grass mods, grass on steroids. I'm using the Skyrim Flora overhaul, and then you'll notice a lot of these trees are dead. I love the look of this. I'm using the Dark Fantasy overhaul, which adds dead trees. It gives more variety in trees, and then it adds these giant mushrooms to the swamp, which to me just transform the way that it looks. And the grass overhauls that I'm using add more varieties of taller grass, varying colors. So I really like how the environment looks. If we head down here, this is the swamp shack. It's called Mirheim. You'll want to check that out. Tiny swamp shack, also called Mirheim. Great mod, very small, but it has everything you need. Now, I'm using water mod here also. This one is called Water. But I believe if you go and take a look at the mod page, it is now bundled with something else. I can't remember what it is. It's a much larger mod that has a lot of different things in it. It's not just a water retexture. There's a lot of retexture stuff going on in there. But it gives us a really kind of unique and interesting environment. Now, I'm also using climates of Tamriel, and that's giving me some of the volumetric fog here. This area is absolutely amazing after nightfall, too. It's pretty incredible to look at. So, Mirheim, like I said, it's a small shack. It's basically one room. I've got some crafting equipment out here. I've got some kind of raised gardens here with lots of good stuff. This is a terrific area for him to be in just because it is filled with all kinds of great ingredients for making poisons. The other thing I like about it, too, is I like the idea that he would choose one of the most dangerous locations in Skyrim and just live there and make it his home. So he's lost, you know, kind of deep in the center of this really sort of dangerous and inhospitable swamp where he's learned to be comfortable. He's surrounded by all kinds of poisonous creatures, and it's a great deterrent to people messing with him. It just feels, it feels sort of lonely, secluded, and that's really kind of how I envision this character, wanting his privacy, wanting to be away from all of that other stuff. All right, let's head inside. I think what we're going to do next is we've got a little sense of the environment. I'll be talking about mods a lot more in future episodes, but let's talk about the loadout a little bit. So I'm using Perkus Maximus. Perkus Maximus is a complete perk overhaul. Let's take a look at how things are distributed. You'll see I'm about halfway through, a little over halfway through 48th level, and I have invested heavily in stamina. There's a couple reasons for this. Obviously, I'm a big user of the bow here. That's going to be the primary weapon, which, you know, the more stamina, the better. But in addition to that, he's also a runner. So he runs literally everywhere he goes. No horses, always lightweight, always low encumbrance, and always running. And we'll kind of demo this later. I've taken a few steps to make that even more viable. So, in enchanting, we've got a couple interesting things. I took the first couple bottom levels here of Enchanter just to get the effectiveness up. Basic Scripture allows me to create some scrolls, but I'm not really doing that, or at least I haven't. It's been a stepping stone to this interesting power, which is Animate Weapon. I've seen it reviewed before and heard people say it. I don't get it. It's just weird. Whatever weapon you have equipped, it's got to be a melee weapon. It floats off your body and it fights your enemies for you. I was intrigued by it, and I've used it, and I really like it. The reason that I like it for Sentrosi is he is lightly armored. He's not very well protected, and it is like the perfect getaway spell. So I can literally equip my sword. I can start the power, and the sword goes to fight for me, and while the enemies are tied up, I am running away. And when the duration of that power ends, my sword is transported back into a sheath on my back, and I'm done. You will rarely see Sentrosi actually fight with his sword on his own. He's almost always using the sword through that power as an escape tool quite often, but I've actually done some assassinations with it, and it's kind of fascinating. So anyway, that'll be interesting. Smithing, been fairly conservative on that. What do we got here? It's hard to do the clicking here. There we go. Okay, I've got steel. We've got the basics here. And then over this way, leather and moonstone. Oh, man. Clicking. There we go. So a couple levels in craftsman. And then I took Meltdown. This allows me to break down equipment that I get as I'm looting, enemies and stuff like that. I can only break down those pieces of equipment that I actually have the skill for. So at this point, it's basically leather, anything made with moonstone as the primary ingredient, or steel. Then I took weaponsmithing. This is great. This allows me to get some additional buffs, but what's really important to me about it is the ability to reforge and ultimately create war-forged weapons. Given that I'm a bow specialist, this allows me to actually create a bow which does not have, it does not drain any stamina. I can pull the string back, and as long as I'm not using the Eagle Vision power, it doesn't drain any stamina, which is awesome. The trade-off here is that once I create a Warforged bow, I cannot enchant the bow. It's Warforged, and it is now no longer able to hold any kind of enchantment. But the bonuses of not having it drain stamina are pretty incredible, especially since stamina is such an integral part of my strategy here. So in ranged weapons, I've kind of gone all around the outside of this, which is longbow. So specialized in longbow, I've taken all of the longbow skills that I can. I had considered doing both longbow and shortbow, but there was something unappealing. As much as I like the short bow perks, there was something unappealing about the idea of carrying around two bows. Just didn't like the concept, so I abandoned that pretty quickly. Light armor. We've got this nimble warfare category. I definitely want to invest more here just to crank up my protection, but to me the most important thing here was getting up here to Disjunct Dispersion, which is a power that drains my magicka all the way to 0, but gives me a 50% protection from magic. So that was huge for me. I very rarely use magicka. Given I'm so specialized in alchemy and enchanting, I rarely use it. So I figured I could sacrifice my magicka in exchange for the magicka protection, the protection against magic. So here I've taken the Prodigy skill for Infiltrator, which gives me some bonuses. He's a very kind of silent, stealthy type of character, obviously. So we've got Muffled Movement, Silent Roll, Thieves Toolbox, which is really nice. I can kind of create some specialized arrows for light and noise making and ropes and stuff so I can climb things. It's a really kind of a utilitarian thing that adds a lot of interest and fun to the game, I think. We'll be seeing some use of that coming up. And then Opportunist and Anatomy and Ambush. That's given me buffs on my attacks from stealth. If I were going to invest in anything more in the sneak tree, it might be Lightfoot. Right now, I'm still susceptible to traps at this point. I can still trip them, take damage from them, so have to be careful there. And then the last one here, like I said, it's pretty simple. In Alchemy, I've gone this route through Distillation, and then up here into Poison Burst, which allows me to create a specialized arrow that creates a radius of poison on impact. And you'll notice that most of the alchemy perks that I've focused on are perks that have to do with adding interest to my ranged weapon attacks. So adhesive explosives and fuse, all of these things allow me to create specialized arrows for things like explosive attacks and stuff like that. I'm really, I've kind of stayed away from some of the other stuff here and really tried to focus on those perks that I could apply specifically to ranged weapon use. So using Perkus Maximus, that means I've also elected to use Immersive Armor and Weapons. So right now I'm sporting a set of armor that is part of the Immersive Armors package. This is the Forest Archer armor set. It's obviously light armor, decent, decent protection. My whole strategy is it's about not being seen in the first place. So I don't worry too much about the protection of the armor so much as does it support the look of the character I'm going after and does it make sense with my story. So he is, wears multiple sets of armor. This is typically the armor that I consider him to be wearing right now when he's out in the forest or in the swamps, doing his thing. I don't have a cloak at this point or anything like that. On the one hand, there aren't that many cloaks that I care for. There are some really wonderful, cloaks and stuff out there. Winter is coming, of course, but after a while, I've just kind of gotten sick of all the huge, bulky, furry cloaks. And the fact of the matter is that with the vampire powers that he has, I'm really not susceptible to any of the inclement weather. So being able to not only travel light, but look lightly armored and lightly equipped, I think was kind of important to me. So the bow here, this is the Scorpion Tail bow from the Unique Bows mod. If you're familiar with that mod, you'll probably notice that I have modified the texture myself, and I've made it white with some off-white accents. The reason I did this is I wanted to make it look more like bone. Something about that made sense with the lore. Like somehow maybe it was, made out of the finger bones of Lorcan, that kind of thing. It had that sense to it. So I modified the texture to make it my own. The sword I'm carrying here is, it's part of the Warrior Within package. So I liked this weapon in particular. It is not, it's not the most devastating weapon in the package. It's treated as if it were a scimitar, and you can craft it under the iron category. I have smithed it up as far as I possibly can, so it's not a huge damage dealer compared to some of the other swords I could use, but the look of the sword, I think, fits with the ethnic background of the character and so forth. So again, this was a trade-off for role play. A utility weapon is the Black Sting dagger. This is what I'm using currently. I'm going to be switching this up fairly soon to something different. But this is part of immersive weapons as well. Then I am running Knock to Tip, and Knock to Tip allows me to produce my own arrows. Now I can only do this with certain materials. I have to get the materials first, and then once I have that, I can actually create my own arrows in the field if I have all the ingredients I need. Great. I love Knock to Tip. It's absolutely wonderful mod. Highly recommend it. It allows you to actually craft arrows and bows and all that stuff outside of the normal smithing structure. So you can have an archer who doesn't have to be quite so dependent on some of the standard smithing stuff, and you can just be really focused and not waste perks that you might want to use on other things. So I like that a lot. Plus it gives you some additional variety in the number of bows that you have available, and it meshes pretty well with Perkus Maximus for the most part. The other thing I will point out is I'm using Hunterborn. Therefore I have an elven hunting knife. This is for skinning and gathering ingredients off of creatures that I kill in the field, and then I can use those ingredients for all kinds of different alchemy purposes, to make things. There's all kinds of cool things that you can do with that, and we'll probably see some examples of that coming up. That is basically it. Now I made some other customizations to the area here. We'll take a look. So one of the things I was interested in doing is, because this is kind of a swampy area, I thought, it makes sense that he would have a boat, and with that boat, that maybe he would have access to solitude with it. So I created my own mod. I'm calling it CouchWarrior's Marsh Boat. And all it really does is it's a very simple mod that places a boat here in the marsh, very close to Mirheim. And then it places a corresponding boat at the docks in Solitude. So you can see I get this Go to Skyrim prompt here as I'm approaching the boat. And then this is going to take me to the docks in Solitude. It's a fairly simple thing, and I think that there's more that I could do to kind of flesh it out. Maybe account for some time passage for travel, things like that. But I haven't done that yet. At this point, I was happy to just kind of get it going. So here's the other boat. Now this is a boat that's actually in the vanilla game that didn't seem to be used for anything, so I just kind of adopted it and made it into my Solitude boat. So essentially the idea is that, you know, you take the boat out through the marsh there, you come into the harbor here, and you dock here so that I don't have to take the road and run all the way up to Dragon Bridge and then up the road here like this. I can just kind of come across the water. And that takes me here to Solitude. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is it. That is it for this episode. Good to be back. We're gonna have some fun here. I'm gonna leave us off here in Solitude, and we'll be picking up our adventure here, and we're gonna do something classic, something fun, something with a lot of action and sort of interesting things to do. But for now, I'm looking forward to bringing this to you, and glad to have you along for the ride. Catch you next time on Dark Messenger.